Hey, content creators, get these 5 contracts or risk losing everything. Ever heard of a creator losing everything overnight? Well, it happens more often than you think. Sponsors back out, guests demand that their interviews be deleted, or your co host or co producer claims that they own the content, they own the show. And it's all because there were no contracts in place. Well, don't let that be you. Today, I'm breaking down the 5 essential contracts that every content creator must have to protect their work, your income, and your future. So stick around. And at the end, I'm going to tell you exactly where you can get lawyer drafted legal forms and templates that'll cover all of this so you never have to worry about missing a key contract again. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Legit Podcast Pro. Welcome back. I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, and I help content creators and podcasters and online entrepreneurs protect their businesses so you can focus on what you do best without worrying about legal issues coming back and haunting you. Now, before we jump in, let me ask you, do you have solid legal agreements in place? Well, if not, this episode is your wake-up call, and I've got something for you, a complete library of legal templates designed specifically for creators like you. More on that later, but you can check it out anytime over at easylegaltemplates.com. So, all right, let's talk about the 5 legal agreements that every content creator must have. First off, we have the content ownership agreement. This is actually a group of different kinds of agreements. One of the biggest mistakes that creators make is assuming that they automatically own everything they create or they pay to have created. That is not always true. Ownership of creative work depends on the agreement or the lack thereof between you and anyone else who's involved. So if you hire an editor, a graphic designer, a social media manager, or collaborate with another creator, a co-host, or something like that, the law might say that they own some or even all of that content, unless you have a contract stating the intention otherwise. This is where these content ownership agreements come in. And depending on your situation, it could take a number of different forms. It could be that independent contractor agreement. If you're hiring someone to edit your podcast or design your website or create music for you, you need a work made for hire clause to ensure that you own the rights to the work. Could be a co-host or a host agreement. You run a show with a co-host who owns the brand, the content, the revenue. A host agreement makes that clear. Could be a collaboration agreement. If you're working with another creator on a joint video or a co-branded series, it's important to spell out who owns what and how any revenues will be split. A joint venture agreement. Maybe you're teaming up on a project where both parties are bringing resources and audiences. Well, a joint venture contract prevents disputes. And an LLC operating agreement. If you've formed an LLC to house your podcast, show, or content business, this agreement defines who owns what, how profits are distributed, and what happens if someone wants to leave. And also, if you are using content that isn't original with you, that is material created and therefore owned by others, well, you'll need a license agreement giving you permission to use that material as well. Without it, you could find yourself in the crosshairs of a nasty copyright or trademark infringement lawsuit. Bottom line, if you don't define ownership and rights up front, well, you could find yourself losing control of your own content. Now, next up, we have the guest release agreement and testimonial release. If you do interviews, whether on a podcast, a YouTube channel, or live stream, you must get a guest release form signed. And here's why. A guest could demand that you take down an episode or video if you didn't get written permission to use their recording, their name, their voice, their likeness. If they later regret something they said, they might even threaten legal action to force you to remove it. And if you have sponsors, the sponsors expect that stuff to stay up. Well, a guest release agreement protects you by getting written consent to the recording and to use the voice, image, and name in the content. It gives you the right to edit, distribute, and monetize that content, and it prevents future legal claims coming from the guest. And some good news for you. I have a free podcast guest release agreement. It's been updated. It includes the AI-related permissions you need nowadays, and you can grab it right now just by heading over to podcastrelease.com. But that's not all. If you collect video or written testimonials from fans, clients, or customers, you also need a testimonial release form. Why? Because if someone later changes their mind, they could demand that you stop using the testimonial or sue you for using their words, their image, their name without explicit permission. The testimonial release will give you clear legal permission to use what they've said, their picture, their signature, whatever it is, without having to come back and ask them again. It gives you ownership rights to repurpose testimonials in your marketing and protection again from takedown demands later on. If you're using testimonials, make sure you have one of these documents in place as well. Now, next up, we have the sponsorship agreement. So you land a sponsor, awesome. But what happens when they ghost you after you deliver their ad, or they demand more work than you agreed to, or they insist on using the content you've created in ways you never approved? Well, without a sponsorship agreement, you could wind up being unpaid or legally liable for a deal gone wrong. A solid sponsorship agreement will cover the payment terms, that is, when and how you get paid. Usually, I recommend an upfront deposit and milestone payments, along with one at final delivery or completion. Deliverables, what exactly are you providing? Podcast ads, social posts, video segments, you name it. Usage rights, can they use your content in their own marketing and promotion and on their social media? And if so, for how long before they have to pay you a renew fee, a renewal or reuse fee? Exclusivity, are you allowed to promote competitors? Never rely on oral agreements with your sponsors. Always, always get things in writing. Now, our fourth kind of agreement that you need is a brand partnership agreement. More and more creators are teaming up for co-hosted shows, influencer campaigns, and collabs. But what happens when one of the parties wants out? Or if money starts coming in and you disagree on the split? That's where brand partnership deals can come in. It'll cover who owns the content, revenue splits, creative control and decision making, and exit terms. What happens if someone needs to leave? Without this kind of an agreement, a successful collaboration can quickly turn into a legal nightmare. And the fifth kind of agreements that you must have in place are your website agreements. If you have a website, whether it's a personal blog, an online store, a membership community, or your podcast website, you absolutely need legal protection. Your website agreements will include the terms of use. This is the document that defines the rules of your site and limits your liability to anybody that comes and visits. You also need a privacy policy. This is required by law if you're collecting any kind of information about your visitors at all, including just the stuff that the browser collects by, automatically, or cookies and things like that. And if you process payments, it's even more important. Next up, you need disclaimers. These are essential, especially if you have financial, health, or coaching related content or legal content, and you need user-generated content agreements. If you allow comments or forum discussions, you need this to protect yourself from liability. Without these documents in place, you could be in violation of various consumer protection laws, and you could open yourself up to lawsuits and fines. So here is a quick recap of the 5 contract types that we've been talking about that every creator must have. The content ownership agreement that defines who owns your content and has work for hire, collaboration, and LLC language in it. The guest release agreement, the testimonial release agreement. These protect your right to use interviews and testimonials. The sponsor agreement ensures that you get paid and defines the terms of your ad campaigns. And the brand partnership agreement prevents disputes and collaborations. And finally, the website agreements. That protects your site with terms of use, privacy policies, disclaimers, and more. So now go out and take action. Get the legal templates you need for your YouTube channel, podcast, or other content-related business over at easylegaltemplates.com. And don't forget that free guest release form at podcastrelease.com. Hey, if you found this helpful, I hope you'll hit the like, the subscribe, and share buttons and share this with other creators, because next time we're going to be talking about the 5 big mistakes that podcast creators make that hold them back from the impact, the influence, and the income that they deserve. So until then, I'll see you on Legit Podcast Pro. I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, signing off.